This is Hot Mike. Hot Mike. On the networks of WDAY. Here's Dom Izzo.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour 2 of Hot Mike, ready to rock and roll on this Wednesday morning. We'll chat. We're now over 500 FBS football players are in the portal. So it opened officially at 12:01 this morning, and we're steamrolling probably towards 1,000 probably by the end of the day. More on that coming up in the next half hour. We mentioned earlier you saw Golden State knock off Memphis last night in the play-in tournament. So Golden State will be the 7th seed. They will face the Houston Rockets. The winner of that series will play the winner of the Timberwolves and the Lakers. That'll begin on Saturday. We got the official schedule late last night, and there's plenty of days off because the NBA loves to have this roll on for about 3 weeks, at least in the first round. It's great to have back on our show. Chris Hine joins us from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, of course, covers the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's also got a new book out on Anthony Edwards, which we'll get to in a minute. It's great to see you again, bud. Thanks again for making time. Should I not be surprised that it's like 3 weeks for the first round to be played between the Lakers and the Wolves?
Yeah, we were wondering how many days off there were going to be, and everybody online's kind of saying, of course, the NBA gave LeBron a whole bunch of days off early in the series. We got 2 days between games 1 and 2, 2 between 2 and 3, and then 2 between 4 and 5. So,
Man.
3 of the first 5 games, you're going to have to wait for a while for them to get played. It's crazy.
And also especially you in the newspaper business, us in the TV business with 8:30 or 9 o'clock starts, those are always great too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, late nights and missing deadlines and blowing right past them and staying up till 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning writing stuff. And then at least you have 2 days off after.
Yeah, that's true.
So there is that. Yes, you have time to recover.
All right, so let's chat about how the Wolves ended the year. The loss, if we're talking this time last week, was right after the game in Milwaukee. But that game, Chris, in Memphis, again, that shows to me just how frustrating this team has been, where they can play amazing at times and beat anybody, but they also prove they could lose to anybody this year.
That is the story of their season, really the story of the last couple of years for them in some ways. So in the playoffs, you would think, well, there shouldn't be any lack of motivation against a big-time opponent. You got LeBron and Luka. That should provide plenty of ammo and mental motivation for them to go out and play, close to their abilities here. It's going to be a fascinating matchup. I wonder how they're going to dissect it, how it's going to break down, who's going to guard who at various points in the game, what sort of lineups the Wolves go with, because I do think they're deep with these 8 bench players, or the 3 bench players, 8 guys in the rotation total, that Chris Finch can kind of piece together what the best lineup may be, especially in closing situations. And it's going to be a fascinating chess match from that end of things, just trying to match up the personnel on both teams, and especially for the Wolves, what works and what doesn't.
How much, Chris, do we go back to that game at the end of February when they played with Luka was there to draw anything out of that for what this series is? Can you tie anything to that or no?
I wouldn't look too much into that game because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert were both out for the Wolves in that game. So obviously the Wolves were down 2 significant players. It was just after the trade, so the Lakers were also figuring themselves out as well. So I think maybe the one thing that, if you look at the box score on that game, and if you're a Wolves fan, you're concerned about, is there were a lot of fouls called on the Lakers in that game. So if that continues, then people are going to take that well.
Yeah.
But I honestly, from all the other X's and O's standpoint, I would not look too much into that game, just because the Wolves were shorthanded and it was so new after the trade for the Lakers as well.
How do you feel what you've seen? The game in Denver a few weeks ago, the game in Memphis. Is this team is it trending in the right direction? Can I say that, or is it's basically game to game from what you've seen in all 82?
I mean, if you look at the total body of work over the last 21 games, they were 17-4. So if you want to look at it that way, then they took care of business on most nights that they should take care of business. It got them to the 6th seed. They had some good wins in there. They had some moments where it was like, what are you doing? But at the same time, you look up in 21 games, they were 17-4. And I think anybody would take that over a 21 game stretch. So I think overall they have been trending in the right direction, the few blips on the radar notwithstanding. But I think Julius Randle's figured it out a little bit
Yeah.
in terms of where he fits on the team. Dante DiVincenzo started off the year slow, but he caught fire halfway through the season, and he looks great. Nikhil Alexander-Walker has been steady all year. Naz Reid can go off for 25, 30 on a given night. And then Ant, who keeps, I think, growing as a player, 39.5% from 3-point range this year, leads the NBA in 3-point makes. But for him, it's going to be all about the decision making in this series and figuring out the puzzles of defensive coverages that the Lakers are going to be throwing at him.
I got to ask here, just conspiracy theorist to me, would it have been, I know they wanted to avoid the play-in, but then seeing last night, I almost like the Wolves matchup with the Rockets way more than I like this one with the Lakers. Is that asinine to say because you don't want to be in a one-gamer, especially against Steph or Ja Morant?
I don't think that's a bad thing to say. I don't think you could just put yourself at risk of
Right.
losing that game. That's the whole thing. I think in a preferred world, the Wolves would be playing either Houston or Denver right now.
Oh,
But by not playing well earlier in the season, they kind of messed that
yep.
up in terms of they didn't have the right or the luxury to be kind of playing that game of where do we want to land, who do we want to play. You just had to get in the postseason, full stop, no matter who you play,
Right.
because you can't really, because you lose the playing game and your prize is either you're out of the playoffs or Oklahoma City. So, and you don't want either of those.
Well,
So, they had to play it the way it played out. If, I think in their heart of hearts, they were in the locker room the other day watching the end of Clippers Warriors. And if the Warriors had won that game, they would have played Denver. And I think in their heart of hearts, they would have preferred the Warriors to pull that one
how
out.
about Draymond Green make a layup and we don't have to worry about it, right? At the end of regulation of the game on Sunday.
That's right.
But to your point, don't lose to the Pelicans. Don't lose to the Pacers when they don't have 4 starters. Those are 2 games that scream to me that they just blew those games to take away your point that they had no luxury after that.
Exactly. You win one of those, and
Yeah.
you're in contention for the 3 seed on the last day of the season. That was the margin of error this season. 1 game, 2 games
Yeah.
made all the difference in terms of where they ended up. And I think it's a lesson that I don't. 2 years ago, they had a similar situation. They ended up on the wrong end of it because they were the 8th seed. But if they had won like 3 or 4 more games, it would have been number 3 or something like that. And so, I don't know what it takes for them to, especially the younger guys, to get that burned in their brains, so to speak. But, maybe they know it now.
I have to ask here now, seeing Luka again, everybody has their memory burned from what happened in the Western Conference Finals last year and hopefully avoiding Rudy Gobert somehow defending Luka Doncic. How do they change this up? I know Cat's not there. How dramatically different can the Wolves defend Luka when obviously LeBron James is on the floor?
Yeah, that's the puzzle, right? This is the chess match, and I don't know how differently you're going to be able to go about it because the Lakers will hunt, whatever matchups they need to hunt. The Wolves have very good perimeter defenders who are good at working around screens to try to prevent that. But at the end of the day, I think if Luka Doncic wants to get switched on to Rudy Gobert in a late game situation, he's going to get switched on to Rudy Gobert. The counter for the Wolves is Rudy Gobert on the floor in those situations? That is the question, right? So do you have a smaller, maybe quicker lineup with Naz Reid and Julius Randle, or maybe just Naz at the 5, where you have a lineup of like Naz Reid, McDaniels, Alexander Walker, Edwards, and DiVincenzo in a late game situation. You go really small in that instance.
Huh.
So that's going to be the matchup, and what do you present to Luka if Rudy's not on the floor? Can you double Luka? Do you not double Luka? I think there's some players that the Lakers will have to play that you will be able to blitz and maybe double Luka and leave somebody unguarded, like a Jared Vanderbilt, for instance, or Jackson Hayes. But late in games, what does it look like for them? What does it look like for the Wolves? We'll find out.
Not Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves, one of my favorite players. You don't want to mess with him, man, because he has turned into a really, really good player. That's like to me, is the X factor for the Lakers. So that guy gets going, that's going to be tough to stop.
Yep, exactly. And that's I think when people look at the trade, the Dallas Lakers trade, a lot of people around the league scratch their heads and are like, how do you not get Austin
Yeah.
Reeves as well
Yeah.
in that trade? How do you not get all their draft picks? How do you not get Austin Reeves? How do you not ask for it all? Because it's Luka Doncic that you're trading for.
Right.
It's okay to ask for
Everything.
the world. It's okay to ask for everything.
Yep.
And so a lot of people see it's
Oh,
like,
man.
why is Austin Reeves still on this team and not in a Dallas Mavericks uniform right now? And that's exactly it, because now he has the room to be their number 3. And Austin Reeves is your number 3 scoring option, is a really good number 3 scoring option to capitalize off of all that attention LeBron and Luka are going to generate.
Chris Hine joining us from the Star Tribune, covers everything Minnesota Timberwolves. I have a couple of salespeople upstairs that love the Wolves that want me to ask you, why doesn't Finch play the young guys more in dealing? I'm sure you get asked that all the time.
It's a very popular question.
What's the deal?
Listen, I don't think Chris Finch is alone in this in the NBA. If you go around the league and you see teams that are competitive or that have playoff aspirations or home court aspirations, whatever, you don't see a lot of young players cracking the rotation, right? Look at what just happened in Denver. Michael Malone just got fired. And one of the reasons why he and the GM, Calvin Booth, were butting heads was because Malone didn't want to play the younger guys. He wanted to stick to the veterans. That's just a coach's instinct. And Chris Finch is kind of playing along with his coach's instinct, which is, I want to go with the experienced guys, the guys that I trust to play heavy minutes. And he only really played the young guys when other guys were hurt, and he absolutely had to.
Right.
So, and the thing with the Wolves is sometimes your bench guys play really well on a given night. So are you gonna cut their minutes? Whose minutes are you cutting? You're not cutting Ant's minutes. You're not gonna cut other guys' minutes, like Jaden McDaniels, your best defender, when he's in fact not in foul trouble. So where do the minutes come from? And that's kind of been the frustration of the fan base. We'll see. Jalen Clark, I think, will have a role in this series as the 9th man off the bench, just to maybe spell the other guys from guarding Luka for a couple minutes. I don't think it's going to be a particularly large role, but he might come in for 8 to 10 minutes a night just to try to guard Luka a little bit. Outside of that, I just don't see a place in this series with the way Chris Finch has been coaching, for like a Terrence Shannon Jr. or Rob Dillingham. But Jalen Clark, I think, could have a role.
Couple last things before I want to chat about the book. Who has a better chance of being on next year's team, in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Julius Randle, both, or neither, in your opinion?
I would say, just given that Julius has a player option, and there are ways in which maybe the Wolves get him to tear that up and sign him to a longer term deal, at maybe less of an annual value than he will make next year. I think there's more options to bring him back. Nickeil is also due for the first significant payday of his career. And so, Julius may be in a spot where he's happy in Minnesota and is willing to take, a little bit less of a paycheck. Nickeil is going to want to maximize, I think, his value, because he's playing for $4.5 million right now, and he's producing at way above that rate when you look at around the league. So I would say Julius Randle.
You have a book coming out in early June called Ant, obviously on Anthony Edwards. I'm really interested. One of my best friends here who works on our show wrote a few books now. He's a sports writer as well. Was a book idea, was this long gestating, or has this come to you like, I got to write about this guy?
It just kind of came to me. It fell into, not, I don't want to say it fell into my lap, but this project came to me through my agent, and it was a great opportunity for me. He found that the book publisher HarperCollins was interested in doing this, and it was a very fortuitous kind of a series of texts and meetings and Zoom calls and all this stuff that ended up working out just great. And, as a writer, you always want to write a book. I think it's a dream come true. And so, I said yes, and I just attacked it with as much energy and enthusiasm as I could muster, really.
How many different people did you interview in this, Chris?
About 50.
Wow.
50 total. Yeah, yeah. So that was crazy.
When when did you get a sense like, okay, this is maybe bigger than I thought? Like, look, this is going to be something. Like, it's going to take up some time to do.
Oh no, I knew right away
Yeah.
that this book was gonna happen that way. And I just mentally prepared myself for the off season, the challenge of writing it. Just trying to work through whatever self doubt there was, how the volume of interviews, and just trying to keep pace with where my deadline was. And it was a tough process, but there were also a lot of days where you know, I knew an interview or something was good and I couldn't wait to kind of write up what somebody had told me, and those were some really fun days. I'm not gonna lie. I had a lot of fun.
The book's going to be released on June 3rd. You can find it anywhere you find books on Amazon. I've already pre-ordered mine because I can't, and I'm not saying that because you're on, because I'm always interested in this guy, but I can remember vividly leading up to the draft, the weird COVID draft, and well, how committed is he to play basketball? Because he loved football, and I know I don't want to give away anything, and I don't want you to give it away. But what the backstory? What did you find out about that? About the commitment to basketball that maybe sold the Wolves on drafting him number one overall?
I think it was how good of a teammate he was at all levels. They really liked that in his personality. They found that he was a hard worker, and that was one of the things that was I guess sort of sticking to him throughout the process here. And so I think they kind of were able to break through some of the noise with just some of the people they knew at the University of Georgia by knowing Ant, and getting to know him a little bit throughout the draft process as well. So they were able to break through some of the noise and find out that he was a great teammate, that he was a hard worker, that he
Mhm.
was all these things. So it was really helpful in that regard that they were able to get that info, and it didn't shy them away from picking Ant.
You have the excerpt that's on the Star Tribune website that came out on Monday from the book. Basically, 5 words that made sold the Wolves. Can you give us a little bit? I don't want to again spoil anything, but a little bit of on what actually sold the Wolves on drafting this guy.
Yeah, it was 5 words that were kind of just inspired Ant during the workout, that, his manager Justin Holland and somebody who was at the workout, a guy named AJ Moye, former Georgia Mr. Basketball,
Oh,
former Indiana player, and now is an assistant coach I think at Valparaiso. But they were there at the workout, and AJ just kind of said something to Ant like, "Hey, we're from Atlanta. We, you know, this is what we do. We are tough. We get through tough
mm.
workouts like this." Because there was a moment in the workout where Ant was struggling with it, and the Wolves were trying to test him. And AJ kind of came down and said, "Hey man, we from Atlanta. We've been through tough situations before. We know what it's like. We to work hard and this and that." And it really came down to a battle of wills for Ant in a way, and that's how he got through the workout. Those 5 words kind of reminded Ant what he was doing this for, right? And got up, you know, finished the workout, knocked it out, and flash forward a few months later, and Ant's the number one pick.
Changed Wolves history after that too. It's
Hmm.
just kind of amazing, and I encourage people to read the excerpt that's on the Star Tribune, and obviously the book that's coming out on June the 3rd. This was awesome, bud. I know you're a busy man. When are you heading to L.A.? When you head out?
Tomorrow morning.
All right, there we go.
Yep.
Thanks so much for doing
Always
this,
fun.
bud, and good luck with the
Yep.
book. Okay, and we'll do this again soon. All right.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Chris Hine joining us from the Star Tribune, beat writer for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And again, the book Ant comes out on June the 3rd, available wherever you get your books. And like I mentioned, I pre-ordered mine. The backs, I can remember vividly us doing the show and getting ready for the draft in whatever it was, October of 2020. And that was all the talk. Was he going to play football? How committed was he to basketball? Chris dives into that, and it's really good stuff on the backstory on Anthony Edwards for those that are interested in it. As I mentioned, the schedule came out late last night after the Warriors game with Memphis for the first round, and this is it. Obviously, game one we knew is Saturday night, 7:30. That's great. WDAY, we got you. Tuesday for game 2. So you got 2 days off, 9 o'clock on TNT. Then 2 more days off a week from Friday for game 3. So we got night 2 of the NFL draft. We got the Bison Spring Showcase that night in game 3. And it's an 8:30 start. So that's great. Get back from the Dome. I can watch the basketball game. 8:30 on ESPN. And then game 4 is at 2:30. That's another one on WDAY. Looking forward to that at Target Center. And then games 5, 6, and 7. April. Look at this. May 4th is game 7. That seems like it's forever away. But that's the schedule for the opening round. A lot of days off, as our friend Jace Fredericks tweeted out last night. We're overdue for a break. We got caught up in a couple emails, and we saved the final half hour for Portal Combat. What's going on in the transfer portal on the opening day of the college football window? Back on Hot Mike right after this.